for a public consultation until the 1st of August. I welcome that. However, my request is that you ensure that a public meeting is held within that time. As you know, there was one public meeting on a Tuesday night. Residents were unaware of that. Some did turn up and they expressed their complete dissatisfaction at the time limit, and the submissions had to be in by the Friday of that week. That was 3 days left. Since then, they have contacted all of the TDs in the area, and I think you're aware of that from correspondence. And I'm particularly asking you to ensure that a public meeting is held, a public information meeting, particularly given our obligations under the Aarhus Convention, which we ratified and which we've signed, and the 3 pillars of which, and I'm sure you're very familiar with them: access to information, public participation in decision making, and access to justice. Now, certainly there hasn't been compliance with that in access to information and full participation in the decision making process. And I say this as someone who has met with Minister Naughton lately in relation to renewable energy. I'm someone who supports that concept, and I think it's the way forward in Ireland. However, we cannot do that in this manner without consultation with the people and have them on board, and not just to have them in a way that a meeting was held as if we were consulting with them, real consultation. And I will draw your attention to the fact that the first lease was just for 10 years. The current application is for a 35-year lease. Number 2, the original lease for 10 years was an application for a Foreshore lease for the construction and operation of a demonstration offshore electricity generation station, a demonstration one. That has now changed into an application for Foreshore lease to construct an offshore electricity generating station. It has changed from wave energy to include wind energy and windmills, and it hasn't helped the process of trust that one application was put in which gave 60-metre height for the wind turbines and so on. That was then changed in a revised application by Ferris Namora, where lower heights were given. So in these circumstances, I think the most minimum requirement is that a public meeting would be held to give out maximum information. Number 1, so that we explain to the public and the local people what's involved, hear their views, listen to their views, and particularly to comply with our obligations under the Aarhus Convention. Thank you, Chair.
Deputy Minister Simon Coveney.
Yeah, thank you, and I thank the Deputy for raising this. In fact, I was in Galway on Friday, and this issue was raised with me as well. In March 2006, the Marine Institute was granted a Foreshore lease for a period of 10 years for the purpose of developing and operating a national quarter-scale test facility in Galway Bay, which I've actually been out to see by boat, for the testing of wave energy devices in accordance with plans and drawings submitted at the time. That lease expired in March 2016, but to ensure the test site continued to meet key objectives set out in the Offshore Renewable Energy Development Plan and the Plan Harnessing our Ocean Wealth, the then Minister consented to a lease extension of 12 months, bringing the expiry date to March 2017. The test site is required to underpin the government's stated objective of producing 50 gigawatts of energy from the ocean by 2050. It provides a test facility where wave energy converters can demonstrate their survivability in harsh ocean conditions. This testing is a necessary phase before commercial-scale ocean energy development can proceed. The consent to extend the lease allows the Marine Institute to operate and utilise the test facility to the extent permitted under the original lease, only until such time as a new application to extend the scope and nature of the facility has been determined, or until March 2017, whichever is the earliest. In March 2016, my department received a fresh application for a lease under Section 2 of the Foreshore Act 1933 from the Marine Institute in respect of the project. The application for a new lease is for the purpose of testing prototype wind, wave and tidal energy devices. It's not a commercial site. It's for testing prototype wind, wave and tidal energy devices, whereas the current lease permits the testing of wave energy devices only. The application was originally put out to public consultation on the 19th of May, with a closing date on the 17th of June, a period of 21 working days. Where a Foreshore application is not accompanied by an environmental impact statement or an EIS, it's not required the standard is not required. The standard duration of a public consultation period is 21 days. However, following representations, including from the Deputy, in respect of the public consultation deadline, I decided to extend the deadline up to the 2nd of August 2016, which is more in line with the consultation period required in EIS cases. Newspaper notices in both Irish and English advising the public about the extended consultation period were placed by the applicant in several newspapers, and they're named in my answer. All application documents continue to be made available to the public in the paper from in paper form in Salt Hill Garda Station, Spiddal Public Library, and so on. So, Deputy, this is about essentially increasing the capacity for test projects of a site that was purely wave energy to actually wave, tidal, and wind. But it is only a test facility. It's not about building full-scale commercial projects on that site, and I think it's important to state that. I take your point in relation to public consultation. Of course, the whole point of extending the deadline here was to allow an opportunity for people to ask questions, to discuss this project, to hear from the Marine Institute what it's all about, which hopefully will allay concerns and fears. I think the research that has been going on in Galway Bay in relation to test wave energy quarter-scale models has been very exciting, and I would like to see Galway Bay continue as a test bed into the future. But I am not going to make any comments in relation to the specific application. We will, of course, listen and read any objections or observations that come into the department in relation to this site. We'll take on board those concerns and take them seriously, and then we will make a balanced and reasonable decision on the Foreshore application in due course.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Connolly, 2 minutes.
I have to say I'm very disappointed with your answer. My specific question was in relation to a public meeting, a public information meeting, as the most basic requirement in a consultation process. That's number one. And you haven't answered that, and I'm asking you again to confirm that that will happen. It is the most basic requirement. Number two, there is serious concerns in the area about a number of matters, and the documents may well be available now. They certainly weren't available in totality before this, and they weren't available in Irish, and it is a Gaeltacht area. On top of that, there is serious concern that certain structures have gone up without a licence. And fourthly, the serious concern that's what's going on here is project splitting in relation to the project. Also, the Galway Bay, as you well know, has many areas of special designation. Time doesn't allow me to go into them. And also, there's an application, as you're fully aware of, in relation to an extensive development in the docks in Galway. And so, I would ask you again, in view of the total I'm reluctant to use the word mess that has been made of the consultation process. In view of that, at the very least, to confirm tonight to the Dáil that a public meeting, a public information meeting will be held, if for no other reason than to rectify the damage that has been done in terms of public confidence in this process and in this project. And actually the changes and the extensions were given because we as TDs had to exert pressure, and I did thank you for extending the time, but it came from pressure, and that pressure on us came from the people in the area who are seriously concerned at what is going on. And so I would ask again, in order to go forward, in order that we have people buying into this project, and why a 35-year lease is necessary, I don't know. It's a big jump from 10. But there are many questions, and I don't have the time to go into those questions. My specific question, in view of the concerns, in view of the mess made to date in terms of the consultation, in our official language, in a Gaeltacht, a public meeting is the most least requirement that we need at this point. And I would ask you just to confirm that that will be held.
Thank you, Deputy.
I think it's important to say I'm not the applicant here. An applicant for a Foreshore licence has the responsibility to ensure that proper public consultation happens, that if meetings are appropriate, that's what happens, I'm the person who actually has to make a decision on the application. So I can't start getting involved in determining what's appropriate and what isn't in terms of trying to assist the process of getting the thing done. My role here is to make sure that a process is followed and that an appropriate decision is made at the end of that. That I take account, using the expertise that I have available to me in my department, of people's concerns, people's objections, people's observations. And if the applicant fails in their responsibilities in terms of notice and consultation and so on, obviously that has to be factored in when we make decisions. But I mean, it certainly isn't my decision as to whether they apply for 10 years or 35 years. That is up to the applicant, the Marine Institute, to make that. If I was to be involved in that choice, people would accuse me of trying to manage a process and have an outcome determined before the actual application was considered at all. So I need to stay separate from this process as the person who has to make the decision on whether it should be granted or not. And of course you're right, that people need to have their say. There's a need for reassurance here. The test site has been there for many years, and I'm sure that many of the questions that people have can be answered and reassurance can be given. But that is a matter for the applicant. My job is to make sure that the law is enforced in terms of the role that I have as an independent decision maker, if you like, on the basis of an application. Because it's the Marine Institute making the application, obviously they are, state-owned. But that's all the more reason why I don't try and micromanage this. So I take the point you're making. I expect the Marine Institute will be listening to this debate, and I expect they'll respond to it. But it would be dangerous for me, in my view, to start getting involved in telling them what they should do in relation to an application that I have to make a decision on. So I hope you'll understand where I'm coming from on it.
Thank you.